All right. Oh, welcome back to the Edge 2020. We wanted to kick off this year by talking to some contributors in the digital marketing news arena that maybe don't get the focus that they deserve. There's a lot going on into writing about the constant changes in SEO, SEM, social media, PPC, content marketing. So we're going to find out what that looks like when we speak to George Nguyen of Search Engine Land and Marketing Land today on The Edge.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right, so this is Edge of the Web, episode 337. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. Every week we bring you amazing guests to chat about digital marketing trends and news and unpack key marketing topics for our digital marketing audience. Thanks for joining us in the live stream. You can always check us out at youtube.com/Edge of the Web. We air 3 p.m. Eastern every Monday, and we certainly appreciate you joining us in our first show of 2020. We've been doing this show for 9 years now. Got a few shows under our belt, and there's certainly a way to listen to us and watch us in your preferred method of consumption. So you want to go check out everything over at edgeofthewebradio.com. We're cranking out podcasts or transcripts or video content, as well as blogs, so much more over there at Edge of the Web Radio. So jump in there and deep dive with each show. So if you're new to the show, welcome. You need to know kind of the ropes here is that every week we're actually talking to top experts in their field in the digital marketing space, and we're broadcasting live stream and then just pour out a number of different curation pieces of transcripts, like I said, social media, and all the video pieces regarding our news segment as well as our focused interview. So if you're wanting to see everything all at once, just jump into the YouTube live stream and also hit that bell. Get reminded whenever we go live. And we're also really imploring our audience to jump in there and ask questions of our guests, because that's what makes it really unique, is to be able to have that interactivity and learn from you, our audience, as we're digging into these different topics. Edge of the Web is actually brought to you by the title sponsor, Site Strategics. They're a pioneer in the agile digital marketing front. Their core specialties are SEO, SEM, social media, conversion rate optimization, and omni-channel media. In fact, we're broadcasting from the Site Strategics studio here at Edge Media Studio. So if you're interested in what results-based agile marketing is, give them a call at 877-SEO for web or 877-736-4932, because I hate spelling those bloody things out. We have that vanity URL, vanity number, but I never translate that. It really kind of pisses me off whenever I have to go translate that and work through the letters. So why do we even have it, Jacob?
I mean, I can remember it.
Right.
I don't know. I'm guessing you probably got this when you were actually on the radio, and you thought people might be in their car, and so you can get them to remember something.
Absolutely.
But yeah, now I don't know.
That's where if you're new to our show, that's where everything originated. We are running a local radio show here in Indianapolis, and kind of springboarded each level of broadcast and digital output. And we said, hey, you know what? You got to take it live stream and so we are here.
Yeah, and now we should just put an antenna on the building of this roof.
Oh my gosh, I think that would be fantastic. Actually, we almost put a rocket ship up there whenever we
radio station.
That's Jacob Mann in the booth. He's the studio creative director. We also want to introduce Allie Coons. She's also the associate producer in the show.
She's refusing to wave.
Oh, she's refusing to wave now. She's actually eating. Oh my Lord.
Late lunch.
Well, I guess we'll swing back around to us. Hey, we wanted to make sure that you knew about some housekeeping for the show. Each and every show, we want to let you know who is going to be on the show next. So we have a slew of really great guests. We've got Timothy Jensen coming up on the 13th, Jay Acunzo for his third a visit to Edge of the Web, and that's going to be on the 20th. Dawn Anderson is going to be on the 27th. Kim Scott's going to be on the 3rd of February, we believe. Hey, if you're interested in being part of the show, being interviewed as a guest, or if you're interested in us talking to somebody that you want to hear from, just let us know. If you email over to info@edgeofthewebradio.com, We'll hunt them down, and we'll be nice about it, but we'll get them on the air so you can ask the questions that you have. Also, again, set your reminders for the YouTube channel so you can get notified when those shows are live. All right, so that's the show housekeeping. We certainly appreciate you joining us for our first show of 2020. We're going to spin around here and dig into some news, but I want to introduce you to our guest who's waiting patiently as I wax poetically here. We got George Nguyen. George, how you doing, sir?
Hey, can you hear me?
We got you.
Awesome. It's so great to be here. I'm doing fantastic. I had a mild meltdown because my headphones went out and I just ran and got a new pair. So crisis averted.
You look completely I mean, you look very calm in your demeanor. So as meltdowns go, you just roll right through that.
I just let the relief wash over me.
So I can see all the screens in here, and right when we were ready to go live, I was like, George is gone. His camera's still on. I saw him pull out his headphones and walk away. Should we go live? I'm sure he'll be back in time. And you were, so it worked out.
So I pulled screw it, let's go live. All right. Hoping that George will be back. Thank you very much for coming back on the screen. That would have made it very, very uncomfortable.
I have a flair for the dramatic.
All right, so George is an associate editor over at Third Door Media. His background is in content marketing, journalism, and storytelling. He actually is an editor on Search Engine Land and Marketing Land. And we wanted to reach out and connect with George because, one, we just want to say thank you because we've been rolling with your stories for the most of 2019. I don't know if you've sensed us stalking you, but we circle around and you have some great information on a regular basis that we can use for our news articles. So thank you very much.
It's been an honor, and that's really nice of you to say. It's been a great community to serve.
Oh, we really appreciate what you've been doing for us. But we wanted to bring you on board because we really want to talk to individuals in your space and learn a little bit more about what it means to be an editor, a content provider from a journalist standpoint inside this industry. And so we want to really unpack that in our interview today. But first and foremost, every show that we do, we roll up some news items. So you ready to take a whack at some of these?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Fantastic.
Especially because I'm kind of a cynic, right? And so my disclaimer is that my views are, of course, they do not reflect my publications. I just kind of view the world with a certain lens.
Absolutely. So we will not hold Search Engine Land or Marketing Land accountable for what George is about to say, nor will we hold Third Door Media, right?
Yeah, don't hold me accountable either, preferably.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're game. So let's go through some news articles here on The Edge.
I'm going to do what God put Ron Burgundy on this earth to do. Have salon-quality hair and read the news.
This week's trending topics.
All right, so welcome to the site Strategic Digital Marketing News Desk. This is the bonus news podcast and video for Edge of the Web Radio, episode 337. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. Joining me in the studio, well, he's not in the studio, but with us at the studio or online, we are communing digitally. How about that?
With every listener in spirit.
Absolutely. It's George Nguyen. George, how are you doing, sir?
Excellent. And I'm ready to dive into this news here with you.
Yeah, we got some good stuff here. We got some good stuff. All right, so very similar to our continued reflection on George as he brings through great articles. I think, I don't know the last time we haven't mentioned Barry Schwartz on this show. I mean, I think he needs to have like a token statue here or something. But we're always
sell Barry Schwartz sweaters now.
Oh my gosh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, there's a company that sells them. And what's next? Tattoos, right?
Oh my gosh, that would be a fantastic competition. Get your first Barry Schwartz Search Engine Roundtable tattoo. Oh, this ought to be a good sponsorship right here, right on your neck. All right, from Search Engine Roundtable, Barry lit up a bit of information regarding Google's New Year's search algorithm update potential here. There's some significant chatter in the SEO industry around a possible New Year's update that started late December 31st and throughout January 1st. So Barry's always been on it, watching the channel, watching the social, and watching a good deal of the applications out there to see if there's any update or volatility in the markets from a ranking standpoint. He's been noticing some significant chatter. Now, George, you have a pulse and a continued thread of communication with some top SEOs. What do you think about this most recent bit of news here, that there was yet again another update in play there?
In terms of my communications with other SEOs, I've not noticed anything very substantial. Nobody's really voiced too much about their clients or any hits in terms of visibility or traffic. But just in other conversations off the record, most people seem to be chalking this up to the holiday hit in search traffic. Sure. People just aren't searching the way they normally do. They don't exhibit the same type of behavior around the holidays that they do around regular time of the year. And this is kind of a manifestation of that.
Yep.
But I do want to reference, Google said they put out some thousands of algorithm updates, minor tweaks here and there. And you never really know what is going to happen when, but I doubt that anybody at Google is really pushing anything major during the holidays.
Oh, that would just prove a pretty negative play, especially whenever we're all paying attention to our clients. And sorry, gotta skip the eggnog here because we've got rankings going down in flames. That would be a bad play, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, but they've shown that they couldn't really care less how the community feels. Well, that's not true. That's unfair. That's a bit harsh. They do care. I feel like what they really want to convey is that wherever the user is, that's where their algorithm is headed towards.
Right.
And if they can keep us in the loop and keep everybody happy, then they will. But otherwise, they're always just going to continue to move towards whatever they think the user wants.
Right.
And that's probably just happening on a daily basis.
No, it absolutely is. But at the same time, haven't we been pummeled with so many different updates here recently that we need to at least get a break from them so we can even stabilize? I mean, the problem is we've got one update after another update, and they're coming at like 2-week intervals now, George, right?
Yeah. Well, it's different because we cover at Search Engine Land, we cover so many different verticals and everything that happens just within search as a whole.
Right.
And when something happens in local, you might have had a break from, the overall core updates, but then these things just keep happening and sometimes they're staggered out and sometimes they're not. It just feels like there's something to care about every week, every other week. But I could understand why that might be the case, because when you have a company that is as prominent as Google, that is so central to the lives of so many people around the world, of course, those people, they're not going to expect less just because there's a holiday in another country.
Yeah, you get a point. We're just a bit chafed from the amount of recent updates, and I mean, you really can't. Unfortunately,
me too, man.
Well, come on. Yeah. I mean, that's fuel for the fire over on your side of the fence. I mean,
I need something to write about though, so it keeps me employed.
So exactly. So you got something going on. So you're getting the stories on. In fact, they're doing it just for you, George. That's why.
Yeah, I remember when the search quality evaluator guidelines went up, and that was 4 p.m. on a Thursday or something, and I stayed up pretty late to do that.
Oh my Lord.
But you know what? It's like I said, it's an honor to be bringing these things to the community in a timely manner, and I hope to just keep the standards up.
No, we really do appreciate it. And that's to the point, is that you and a good deal of your colleagues have that particular responsibility of not only giving us the information that's coming at you, but also sifting through it, because there's so many myths still in this space that have to be debunked, and there just needs to be some clarity on what we should be paying attention to. That it's a pretty important role that you guys have over there at Third Door.
And about those myths, people think that, this is a myth and this is not. It's so easily bucketed into one category or the other. That's not the way things are nowadays, that I've noticed, especially with just every once in a while, John Mueller popping up on Ask Google Webmaster saying, hey, the way that you thought this works, that's not how it works. This is how it works. And then things that were quote unquote best practices are now just myths. And we have to learn to deal with it however we can.
Yeah, exactly. They kind of pull the rug from underneath us when all of our structure that we were relying upon starts. Evidently, they've been looking at this for a long time without that structure. They're just having to tell us about it now, and most of this is hints as opposed to things that you could bloody well rely on. I'm starting
hints.
to go.
Interesting word choice. Hints.
Starting to go down your cynical road, George. I got to pull back for a second. Hey, over at Search Engine Land by Jenny Marvin, Microsoft Advertising launches Sweepstakes for advertisers. Now check this out. They actually have a sweepstakes that you can actually compete with, compete the Microsoft Advertising Certified Professional Certification and a new Microsoft Advertising account, or enroll. And these are the different ways to actually enter. But what's going on with this the sweepstakes? What can you get if you are actually entering?
So at the base level, the first 30 entrants get a $50 Starbucks gift card. And I think that's just enough to kind of get people to enter. First of all, I want to have like this general disclaimer that I generally cover the organic side. Right. And for Marketing Land, I do some podcast coverage as well. Mm-hmm. So the ad side is a little bit more foreign to me. But that having been said, you don't need to be familiar with the ad side to understand the sweepstakes here. It just kind of seems like it's, hey, give us a try and you might win something. And I think that this is an interesting strategy because, like, have you ever had a client, or have you ever spoken to anyone that had a client that they try to really get on board with their platform or something and offered some sort of incentive for them to go through the tutorials and stuff like that?
No, never. Well,
I used to work at it.
Google AdWords would kind of swing around and throw that $100 mark at you, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but a lot more interesting prizes. They seem really geared towards the specific advertiser or the agency. I mean, one of them is an Xbox One X.
I know!
Which is like, yeah, I get it. You're Microsoft. But I feel like there could have been something a bit more appropriate. I'd take it. But
what's more appropriate than an Xbox? I mean, come on.
For a marketer, right?
I know. So, I mean, their grand prize, well, they've got 30 entries for $50 Starbucks, which is also tapping right into that caffeine junkie vein that we all have. Grand prize are a trip for two individuals of the winning company to the Microsoft Advertising Elevate, previously known as the Partner Summit on March 30th and April 1st at the Microsoft headquarters. Well, cool. And then grand prize is also a team co-experience up to 10 individuals of the winning program or company awarded to one agency based in the UK, Ireland, Netherlands, and Germany only. So takes the US completely out of the equation there. Then those first prizes, Xbox One. How many are those? How many Xboxes? One device awarded per agency to 3 agencies. All right. And then
so you kind of have to have an agency culture there.
Yeah.
To have your video games in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, if you get one Xbox, then you're actually going to have like a cage match deciding who gets to play it during the workday, right?
My question is like, okay, so if you want, my question is, how effective do they think this is going to be? And like, you have to get your clients, if you're an agency, which seems like who it's geared towards,
sure.
You have to get your clients on board with advertising on Bing. And I feel like most clients have a preference, and the ones that don't have a strong preference, you're probably already there doing that for. So how effective is this really going to be? But it doesn't look like it's going to cost them that much. And I just love that Microsoft is willing to do things that are kind of odd.
Yeah.
But that's what keeps things fresh.
They need to find their own platform. They've been living in the shadows too long under AdWords, and they've been doing a huge amount of improvements on their platform as well.
Absolutely.
And we certainly give kudos to John Lee over there. Yeah, these kind of things, these type of nuanced niche type of advertisements and incentivizations, it'll go a long way. And we're in the space that the mainstream ad platforms, right, are a bit lackluster. It's a bit too expensive to be in those spaces. That's where a Bing and a Quora and LinkedIn are really going to be more and more attractive to be able to find unique opportunities for our clients.
I think that Microsoft just needs to make more of a ruckus as well. I mean, that's the position you're in when you're the underdog or you're second by a huge margin is why not just generate some noise? I think they really lost an opportunity. I think earlier last year, they said they'd been applying BERT techniques to search for like 6 months.
Wow.
And then Google came out with their announcement and they were like, oh yeah, but we've been doing it for 6 months. We just didn't say anything. Why didn't you say anything? That's a huge deal.
Absolutely is. And I think they've missed the boat regularly on trying to bring awareness to Microsoft. Just at the same time, they're also reorganizing themselves a bit over the past year and a half, at least for the ad platform standpoint.
Yeah, definitely on the ad platform.
Yeah. So we wish them all the best, and we certainly, hey, we over here at Edge and Site, we certainly recommend trying out Bing. I mean, there's so many good integrations between your AdWords, your Google Ads platform as well. You can sync them up and then be able to capture that audience without having to completely reconstruct and redevelop your ad campaign. So as a particular note of recommendation, I think it's a pretty good platform, and it does convert quite cheaply, all things considered. All right. So our last article is over here at Search Engine Journal from Roger Monti. And this goes to your point here about John Mueller popping in every once in a while. He is kind of like that Max Headroom of Google nowadays. He's jumping in with a quick video insert, and they are really giving us some clarity on things on a regular basis through the Webmasters Conference or the Webmasters video snippets. So John jumps in and explains how to use headings for Google for SEO. So there's been a big controversy, especially when they released that you can have as many H1s, as many headlines at a per page level as you want, and that really kind of threw all the SEOs on our ear because we've been using that as a guideline, a structural guideline for our web content for a while. So there was a question posed to John, a long question on headers, H1, H2, and H3. What's the best setup? And again, background is that we've been doing this type of structure for a very long time. And about 3 months ago, Google came out with hey, don't worry about it. It's more syntaxically related. You don't have to have a single H1 on that. So John actually rebukes old SEO practices. He jumped in there. He says, I think in general headings are a bit overrated in the sense that it's very easy to get pulled into lots of theoretical discussions on what the optimal headings should be. He went on to explain we should use headings when it comes to search, but we use them to better understand the content of the page. Again, that syntax or that semantical references there. So he went on further to explain. So the question of how should I order my H1s, H2s, H3s headings, and what should be the content, that's something from my point of view isn't really relevant. So not only to add insult to injury is that the headlines really aren't relevant how you actually organize them. So you're deep in the search channel, George. I'm going to turn it back over to you. What's your take on what John was actually explaining here? And feel free to jump in further on some of the additional explanations.
I think that his explanation is the issue that a lot of us within the industry have because we have so much at stake in terms of the success of our clients or our own brand is because we're so invested and we're looking further into what is John really saying here.
Right.
And a lot of the times we get caught up in the first sentence, like, hey, relax, don't worry about it so much. We'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. But I can't just relax. I need this client to renew. And that's where we come from. But that reaction isn't very useful. Mm-hmm. When you're just trying to evaluate the communication that's being provided by Google via John in this case. The original thing about H1s, whether it's marked up or it just is stylized text or not even there at all, that not being all that important,
right?
Kind of threw me for a loop too. But then when you actually think about it, there are so many people on the internet and the way that they consume content is so diverse and all these user bases, these audiences are so diverse. It makes sense that Google has to adapt to be able to crawl as much of it as it can. And having a hierarchy of importance, if it doesn't matter that you have 2 H1s or 3 H1s or no H1s, then why would it matter what's in your H2 or H3 relative to what's in your H1, if that H1 didn't matter so much in the first place.
Right.
But he does go on to say that there's this, they use the header tags to inform the content around it. So maybe an image or the text in the paragraph, and that content, the way they understand it, helps to inform rankings. So it does kind of help, but not the way you think it helps.
It's more
That's
like
the main thing.
It's like proximal content or something like that. That is a a level of relevancy based on its surroundings. But I do think, to your point, is that they've said it for a good period of time here, is that they're looking at many more elements than just that structural content. So the structure of those headlines. The point being is that they already knew what those headlines were, even if they were just marked up, stylized information. Because if you are bolding, if you're bringing to prominence a particular line of text for the user, they understand that this was meant for the user's consumption, and then you're really not needing those headlines anymore because you're actually affecting your GUI a bit to be able to educate that user. So they've already taken into consideration that there was such a inadvertent use of H2s and H1s and what have you. I mean, I've seen it, and you've seen it time and time again, as all of a sudden there's an H2 on the sidebar of every bloody page, and you're scratching your head, what in the world was the developer thinking? Well, if Google's taken that in context, they already have dismissed H2 as a relevant factor on that content. So they're getting more insightful into each and every one of our websites even more. I wouldn't doubt that there's some sort of thumbprint or profile of how to consume the content from that website based on how it spidered it before. What say you?
Are we talking conspiracy theories now?
I truly am.
I can't speak to that. I don't know enough about the technical SEO and how the crawlers consume everything. But I'm sure Google keeps track of how a website develops over time.
Yep.
So all that information is already there. But on the topic of subheads, H1s, what have you, I cannot reiterate enough. And anything similar that Google might say, just because they say that they don't use it or it's not important for their for Googlebot or their processes, doesn't mean that you should abandon it. I mean, I understand if it takes an absurd amount of time to implement something and it's not worthwhile for your client or for your brand, sure. But there are so many people on the internet that depend on header tags or pagination because they use screen readers. Like, you don't just not stop at a stop sign because you don't see a police car, right?
Yep.
Or a red light. You do it because it's the right thing to do, because everyone's just kind of better for it. And that's kind of something I wanted to reiterate. Every time this header conversation, or like even last year, Google's belated rel equals previous next pagination announcement.
Right.
People get so caught up on how Google's going to do this. But if it doesn't really matter, if they're not saying, if they say that it doesn't hurt your SEO and it's already there, then and somebody benefits from it, shouldn't you keep doing it just from an ethical standpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. And we shouldn't forget the ADA factor here. And that's what you're talking about with screen readers, is that they're wired to read headline, and they're wired to understand the HTML markup there and guide that visually impaired person or auditorily impaired person to be able to understand that content. And so, I mean, SEO came from ADA principles, so to speak, back in the WCAG side of things. But you're absolutely right, is that we should be rolling out content for the consumer. And if Google's telling us, don't worry about it, we still have to pay attention to how we're guiding that reader down the screen, right?
Yeah, and you just don't have to worry about, well, you should never be stuffing keywords into things. But now if it doesn't fit, you don't have that burden on your shoulders of like, oh, this keyword's only in there, 37 times in this 2,000 word. No, chill.
Yep. Yeah. I guess maybe it's just don't take as much preening over the individual headline configurations to begin with. It is about the relevancy of the content, the surrounding content, and if you're grinding through thousands of headlines to change a monicum to be able to see how that's going to react, you're really not paying attention to the full picture. It's about the content that you're writing and that the consumers understand and that there's relevant user experience there. Anyway, that's a good take. It truly is a good take, George. I appreciate that. All right, so we do want to thank our sponsor, Ahrefs, for being a continued sponsor on Edge. Ahrefs, or Ahrefs, as it's in common tongue, makes competitive analysis very, very easy. Their tools show you how your competitors are getting their rankings from Google and why. You can see the pages, the content that send the most traffic to from the search engines, find out the exact keywords that they're ranking on, and which backlinks are actually helping them rank. From there, you can replicate and improve on their strategies. So if you haven't checked out Ahrefs, go over to www. Nobody says www nowadays, do they? Holy crap. Am I just showing my age here? I really am. ahrefs.com, and you can sign up right there for a free trial. It's a great tool. We love it over here. We're literally, I've got maybe 4 tabs of that tool open on my desktop right now. So we're using it constantly. Go check it out. It's one of the best inbound link analysis tools that we've ever come across here, and they've certainly matured over the decades. So go check out ahrefs.com today for that free trial, and we love it over here, and so will you. All right, there's the gratuitous plug. Let's meet. There's the news for the day. So we want to get into even more news with our news industry expert. So let's jump into this week's deep dive.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with George Nguyen, Associate Editor at Third Door Media.
And for those of you listening, you got to check out the video because George has a quite a smug expression on his avatar there. He even jumped in there and told us that you're a bit more excited than what that picture showed.
Yeah, I'm generally smiling. I just needed something for Slack that day. And it's just, I was like, okay, this is going to kind of go across the board here. And I am excited to be here and excited to speak with you.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Again, like we said before, is that we've been covering George with his articles over at Search Engine Land and Marketing Land for about a year and a half now. And you've certainly been forthcoming with some great insights, some great information. You're covering a heck of a lot of things in our industry. Let's introduce you to our audience. George covers breaking search news over at Search Engine Land, like I said, as well as podcasting over at Marketing Land. Both are fantastic portals of information over the last decade, and they continue to be an authoritative place for information in the digital marketing industry. George moderates a number of conferences from Third Door. That's SMX East and West, as well as the advanced conferences. He's also got a long history in podcasting and spent nearly 9 years in Korea. Half the time you were on radio as a writer and personality on the radio. That's very cool. That's where you got started in journalism. So there's the small story. George, tell us the big story. How in the world did you get where you are and that you got to Search Engine Land? Because it's a bit of a coveted space you got there.
Yeah, and I didn't actually know that. So I guess I'll just lead with the very, very short answer, and hopefully it'll just keep people listening. I applied on Indeed.
Just like that, man. You just burst the bubble. There was mystique. There was this ethereal plane.
There was no hookup or industry insider thing.
Yeah.
I saw this listening for Third Door Media. I didn't know what Third Door Media was, but I was familiar with their property, Search Engine Land, because I was working at a content marketing firm prior.
Sure.
And I was like, oh yeah, this place puts out pretty good stuff. I read a few of their articles, and I just didn't even, I'm sure Ginny is watching this right now, my boss, which I have to say thank you to all of my colleagues, because, for all the praise that you've just given to me, it really should really go to them. It really does take a village to turn me from what I was into whatever I am now, whatever opinion you might have of me now.
It's probably going to change by the end of this show. So,
but anyway, I saw the listing. It was 4 weeks old, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to send my resume. I'll one-click it. I'm not going to spend much time on it. And then I got a reply the next business day. They happened to need somebody with my particular skill set, something in journalism, but also 1 foot in marketing. And then it turned out, this is where things got interesting, because my VP, Henry, actually knew somebody who hired me at one of my former jobs. And before I even really had a chance to speak to Henry, he asked that person about me, and they provided a nice little reference for me, all without my knowledge. So I'm very, very fortunate. I feel like sometimes the universe does just pull you into certain directions, and you just have to lean in. And that's kind of how I got here. There's not really, I can't give you any tips. If you're watching for tips on how to get onto search engine land,
Wow.
You're just going to have to contribute.
All right, folks, that's the show. Appreciate it, for everybody, for watching and listening. And the next week, all right. So I mean, it does happen that way. And over the years we've been doing this show, every once in a while, there's a story like that all of a sudden something just happened, and my gosh, what a windfall moment, right? So
I would say that everybody's windfall is different for everyone else.
Sure.
So I'm sure what you would define, Aaron, as a windfall for yourself might be something that maybe somebody else doesn't want to do. Like my partner, she doesn't want to do anything related to marketing. She's in the fitness sector. But for years, I was a teacher for half my time in Korea, and that really wasn't what I wanted to do. And I started saying yes to things that just seemed interesting. And radio was one of those things. And if you just keep saying yes to those things, you kind of see that everything gets fragmented. You're like, well, I like this and I like that and I like this. How are they all going to come together? But if you keep doing them and you keep progressing at them, one day you'll find an opportunity where they do come together, and that'll be that big windfall for you.
Yep.
And you'll have a hard time explaining it on a podcast like me right now.
I'm just looking for a windfall where all my kids get up at the same time without me like taking a cattle prod to get them up. I mean, that's my windfall moment, to be honest with you. No, but you're absolutely right. Everybody has their own unique scenario, and serendipity aside, is that you still have to move the needle. You have to be open and find opportunity. You just can't wait for something to happen. You've got to be able to take a risk and jump into a space that's uncomfortable for some. So you're absolutely right. So I reached out to you at the end of last year to see if we could actually sit down and have a talk. I'm wanting to start up a new area on the show, on this podcast, just talking to contributors such as yourself, because there is kind of a unique side of the equation inside of in this industry that doesn't really get that much attention, and it's literally having to cover all the things that are changing so bloody much in this industry. I mean, it is ungodly. And it is literally a 24-hour news cycle on some of these things, especially like we were talking about, from updates and volatility in the search ranking realm. We are hyper reactive as marketers, wanting to pay attention and to be able to capitalize on unique scenarios on a regular basis. But there's so much to pay attention to that we need individuals to help sift through this and give us a little bit of backstory and picture of relevancy and reality. So that was a very long-winded role, just trying to tie into understanding what it's like in the space to be able to bring forth this information. You certainly are astute in the industry and the services that we're talking about. But what is it like having to report on this and separating fact from fiction? I'll start with that.
One of the things is, first of all, deciding on what to cover. So obviously there are topics that the entire industry cares about, like any core algorithm update. But then there are minor releases, like Yoast might put something out. When they first started doing their structured data thing, I was covering that. And then eventually it kind of teetered off and I stopped covering that. But really finding that sweet spot of where our audience is, what they actually care about, the size of the enterprise that they represent or the agencies that they work for, what kind of tool sets they use. Being in tune with that, with all those things, is probably the most important consideration for us. That's I would say the toughest part. But the news cycle that you spoke about, I would say that that's actually not been as bad as trying to figure out what's appropriate to cover for our sites and for the level of for me, it's the level of SEO, because not everybody has 10 plus years in the industry.
Right.
like Barry has. Some people need a more of a beginner level introduction to things, and usually I'm the one to do that because I have much less experience than a lot of my colleagues do.
Mm-hmm.
But finding that fine line is really important. Also trying to put it in language that people can digest without actually having to look up the original source and start using a dictionary and then, search engine, like just finding all these other different words. Like,
Right.
wait, what does this mean? Like explaining BERT was pretty much a nightmare.
Oh yeah, try to have a podcast trying to describe that for a couple of shows. It's like, all right, for those of you that want to get smacked upside the head with this technicality, here we go. No, you're absolutely right. You tend to be a translator of sorts, especially in the more technical side of the digital marketing realm, right?
Yeah, and the thing that people don't really think about when they think of journalists or anybody covering a beat, a reporter, is that if you've been there a long time, then you have this amazing wealth of knowledge that you can draw from. If you don't, then you are literally researching every time you're at the keyboard. You have to learn what it is. You have to learn its history so that you can provide a nuanced article that your demographic will actually care to read. And that happens to me a lot because I just want to be thorough, but also because I think the history matters. Everybody will tell you I have a tendency to overwrite things. So something that could have been done in like 200 words, I might go to 600, and then I have to aggressively cut. So I waste a lot of time that way. But
not really though, but because you're also, I mean, as much as that's good content, you're also educating yourself along the process. So whether it falls on the cutting room floor, you're going to be more apt to be able to give a better review of a particular issue the next time this particular issue comes around, right?
That's what I meant to say, Aaron.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. I mean, that's it. Is in a certain vein, we do that here is to cover these topics, cover the discussions that are going on. It helps us enormously to have our staff educated in these different spaces because there's a constant flow of new information, and just being able to process it, curate it, getting into different spaces, it's by its very nature disciplining us to learn and stay on top of things. So it delivers right to our clients in one way, shape, or form. So I mean, it's good to be able to deep dive. You just have to be able to pull back and translate. And sometimes I fail to get that point across because I have seen eyes roll back in their heads and foaming at the mouth as I go into my rants. See, they're actually averting their eyes. The staff.
I'm thinking I need to get this window tinted over here.
Yeah, I have to agree, especially because we come at all of us who work in the same sector and just kind of do the same job with multiple clients, or have the same familiarity with a platform, a company. Whenever that company does something, like since we talk about Google so much, that's low-hanging fruit. Whenever they do something, we already have it kind of pegged. We pigeonhole whatever thing. Oh, they introduced a FAQ schema. Well, they want to steal our clicks. Oh, did you really have to zoom in there? Oh, when I did that was perfect timing.
Thumbnail.
Okay.
That's going to turn into a Giphy here a little bit later on the show.
But that's what I'm saying is, we have the context.
Right.
And that can inform us, but also sometimes it can hinder us. And for me, writing, I have to make sure my writing is more objective than my speech. Hopefully, it is.
Well, yeah, and you need to. There are what I was saying earlier. We are such a reactionary bunch in SEO, especially so, because it's about getting that traffic. And as much as we understand what Google's really their mission is to provide a better experience for its customer, we are a bit skeptical of anything and everything that carves away, or at least is perceived to be carving away traffic and impressions that mean commerce to us, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's that, but also you have to be able to. I know it's hard for people at agencies, but I try to deliver information so that people can make an objective decision or whatever's right for them. So you kind of have to deliver it objectively. And deliver that cost benefit analysis. But when you kind of work in an area where clearly you would benefit if they went one way instead of the other, that's really hard to do. And you have to weigh your own biases with whatever new product or whatever the client is asking for, all those considerations in mind when you present that information.
Because it does skew, it skews perspective very, very, very quickly. So this is why shows like this exist, so you can actually vent and rant, and it doesn't get back into into your publication. So I want to cover a few more things in that space, but I do want to take a quick moment and actually refer to some of the articles that you've just recently released. Just quickly, you're just running through some of the headlines. Online tax filing services can no longer hide free services from Google search results. Bing revives its cash program with rebates. SEO year in review was a really good recap. You also, in which you covered BERT, local spam, and a number of different things in 2019. Search engine patents with Bill Slawski. I mean, Bing partners with flight booking sites. The big list of 2019 search algorithm updates. There's a lot of information that you're continually rolling out, and you have to be quite aware and quite knowledgeable about all these different things, man, because one, it's coming from a lot of different sources, and you have to be able to hone this in and codify correctly what you're really hearing, what people are hearing. But I mean, there's a lot of information that your publications shore up as some clarion calls or some good wrap-up material of what someone needs to know to make sense out of this space. So it's a really important place that you're taking on there. What are some of your favorite stories that you've written here over the last year that got some traction, got some good traction?
I would say that one of the ones that came up to mind, but also I did not include in my year in review, my SEO year in review, was the subdomain leasing.
Oh,
did you speak about that?
Yeah, we covered that a while back. Yeah,
that was kind of in the middle of the summer. So that was a big deal. I also I'm not really sure how to feel about it all the time, because if you're unfamiliar with the topic, it's essentially third-party coupon-like sites partnering up with major publishers that they generally have some sort of online presence that's been established. Like CNN has one.
Right.
It's like coupons.cnn.com. And I guess to oversimplify it, people have said that these third-party coupon sites are using the carried over goodwill and all the signals from the main domain CNN to rise higher up in the ranks, beat out established sites like Groupon.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked with one of the CEOs of one of the companies, the coupon sites that does this, and it was a very interesting discussion. But I feel like that is something to keep an eye on, just because it begs the question: is it an unfair advantage? But it's not so simple, because a lot of people say, "Hey, you open a newspaper and there are ads in it." Right, and they're using that newspaper's visibility to get in front of the reader. How is that different? I would say that is different because, well, you're on a website, and like when you go to get the New York Times, you are buying the New York Times.
You are a subscriber. Yeah, there you go.
When you're going on a search engine, that's not the same thing.
Nope, absolutely not. You're literally poaching some of the clout of that brand, and you're exploiting the clout of that brand and the domain authority to be able to. I mean, this is literally link buying, right?
I wouldn't say it's literally link buying. It's a much more nuanced discussion than that. That's why I have a hard time myself kind of figuring out where I'm at with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just say that it doesn't seem completely white hat. But I feel like if you read my article, I kind of come off that way. I think people told me, yeah, this comes off as kind of biased. Did you really want people to feel like they could make their own decision on this? And I looked back on it and I was like, I felt like, no, I kind of went at it with an angle of maybe you are doing something that's a little bit illicit here.
So that brings up a perfectly good question. How many eyes get on your articles that you guys write over there? And do you have a bit of an internal policing policy of, okay, fresh eyes, do I sound cynical? Do I sound a bit skewed or biased? Any editorial junket has that type of process. I'm assuming you guys have something like that in house as well.
Yeah, my editor-in-chief makes sure that I don't go, way off base with anything. But when we do a news brief, it's generally just, here's the news. And this is why it's important.
Right.
That's that. It's as direct as we can possibly make it with everything you care about. However, when we do a feature, we might try to get voices of the community, some of the people that you featured on this podcast. Like I try to get in touch with Lily Ray whenever I can, because she's an excellent voice in the community. She's very well informed.
Yep.
And her opinion carries a lot of clout, and I always want to hear it. So whenever there's a given topic that's pertinent, and I feel like she'd not be knowledgeable, I try to include voices from the community there.
Yep.
And that's one way to insert more opinions that can inform how the reader views the subject matter or the controversy as a whole without actually getting in there myself. Because I still have to maintain my integrity and try to be as unbiased as possible. Sometimes I might come at things with a certain slant because you just know they're wrong. Like I did a piece of coverage on when the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, I can't remember which publication, they posted, or they had this huge article about all these spam local listings that Google had, millions and millions of them, of course. But you have interviews with like local business owners who see their rankings get pushed further down by a flood of spam listings. And then the only way to regain their visibility, they feel, is to buy those ads. So if Google doesn't do anything about the spam listings, they still benefit from those local service providers buying ads.
Right.
So no matter what, Google is positioned to win. And that just feels very, very wrong. Like you're not a platform so much as, I think one of the people interviewed in that original piece by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, forgive me, called it extortion. And you could see why they would feel that way. If you were a business owner, you'd feel that way as well.
Right.
And so there's not really another way to go about it other than Google, you need to be better about this if you want people to use your platform.
No, absolutely. It's good to be able to have that plumb, so to speak, of how to approach an article. You also have, you and your editorial staff have another obligation to be able to translate this outwardly to other media platforms who don't get it. And we cover the Wall Street Journal review of Google rankings and the black hat side of things, so to speak, that came out latter part of last year. And immediately Barry was out there just burning down the Wall Street with some legitimate points of, you have no idea what you're saying in this paragraph or this paragraph. And it was legitimate. I mean, unfortunately, the mainstream media, for lack of a better description, doesn't have context, doesn't have knowledge, and it's such an easy thing to just throw a flaming bag of crap in the middle of the public sphere of understanding what Google's done, because the people are thinking continually that there's a monopolistic antitrust perspective there, where, I mean, if they're and we talked to Bill Slawski just about this, is that there's a lot of different takes that you can have, but if the media decides to march up, they're not going to fact check. They're not going to even understand the beginning of nuance, right? In this space.
Are you calling it fake news?
without so many, actually with way too many words. It could very well be, and I mean, there's political slants. There's so many different scenarios.
I would say that particular piece, it could have been and it should have been done much better for how influential it'll be for the general public. That having been said, like they should own up to that, and to my knowledge, nothing has been done to remedy the situation. But I would say that overall, they do quality reporting, and sometimes a reporter just kind of gets really attached to a certain angle. So before I was in the glorious world of digital marketing reporting, I was a culture journalist, and I would create my stories and I try to have something really tangible as a takeaway, but sometimes there wouldn't be. And then you have to decide for yourself, well, do I abandon this and all the time and energy I put into it, or do I try to make something of it that doesn't necessarily uphold all the integrity of whatever publication that I work for?
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to weigh that out for yourself when you're the person creating the story. And I think that maybe this person, actually almost certainly the author of these articles, they just didn't do the right thing.
Authors, plural. I mean, there were like 4 or 5 heads there putting together this tome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 23 pages. It killed my printer. Literally,
It's really tragic, actually,
it was.
for the visibility.
But organizations such as SEL and Marketing Land and Marketing Tech and TechCrunch and all of these different organizations have a role in public understanding, and unfortunately, it's a scenario where our industry is just not very well known, and it's very easy to try to make some uneducated arguments. So you have another role, not only interviewing experts about a particular topic, not deep diving for our listeners, so to speak, but you also have to be cited or citable by the mainstream for their understanding, right?
Yeah, and I would say that most SEOs are in no rush to go and defend Google. So when we say, hey, you're coming at this with the wrong angle, you should maybe, issue a retraction or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, quick announcement to our listeners. Hey, you always wanted to jump in and hit that bell on the YouTube channel to make sure that you're getting reminded when we go live, because we want to see you here in our conversations on a regular basis and ask a guest like George some pointed questions, because this is your forum as well. So make sure you jump over there and smash that bell. That's what the young folks say, right? All right, swinging back around. All right, so talking about reviewing the experts here for a second, George, is that there is a huge amount of clout and value to be cited as an expert in one's field. Before we get into conferences, just talking about that, there's a PR play for speakers and experts to be cited in the industry articles of merit and going to the speaker circuit. Do you find that influencers are trying to regularly pitch you ideas or stories or their take to you?
I find that there's always somebody who wants to pitch something in terms of getting it published on the website. Right. We get tons of spam, and that's kind of hard to filter out because sometimes something might be legitimate, but I'm not the one who looks through everything, but I feel like the person who does have to look through everything has a really tough job, because some people, they just want to write something that's kind of self-serving. And that's why we have guidelines in place. We strictly monitor all the links that go out from every article and things like that. But I think that also, getting published and speaking at conferences is a pretty big thing for any marketer's personal brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For their company, sometimes it's also really good because if you're familiar with the space, then you're familiar with the people within the space, and that brings business to that company. But it's mostly about your personal branding. Mm-hmm. But I feel like within the community itself, if you're speaking, if you're writing, and you don't know what you're talking about, you don't have the level of experience, or it's blatant that you're in it for yourself.
Yep.
You're not going to get very far. The people that you've had on this podcast, the people that we vet on Search Engine Land, our contributors, you have to do it for the right reasons. And that's pushing the industry forward, finding the best ways, the best techniques to do whatever your job is. And that has to come first and foremost before anybody will respect you, before you're going to get on any conference stage.
No, absolutely. We've had our own fair share of spam trying to get on the podcast here, and you do have to make sure that they're legitimate, that they've got a good wake behind them of contribution. And what we're seeing is that over the years, there's been so many people publishing top 10 ways to do this, the top tips for this, and it's just a glut of noise out there.
People love listicles.
Well, I mean, on top of that, you can also get a rich snippet every once in a while, right? But
you won't believe what number 8 is.
Clickbait. But along with that is that we're seeing a lot of contributors in the experts that are wanting to legitimately put forth good education here. Marie Haynes is a perfect example. Granted,
Absolutely.
she has her agency business, but that podcast is bar none one of the best, if not the best, SEO podcast out there. That's just unpacking key concepts on a regular basis, and it's got practical execution there, and these are starting to bubble up. You're seeing more and more of these wanted contributions. These people that are truly wanting to educate.
Yeah, and now you're not looking everywhere to figure out what the best techniques are. They kind of come to you. All you have to do is, follow a few publications, sign up to the Search Engine Land newsletter. Hey,
there's the plug.
Subscribe to this podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And it's easy to stay on top of things now. It's not like what it once was, where you're struggling to find out how other marketers are approaching a similar situation to you.
No, it is starting to stabilize. I mean, there's no certifications in these industries yet, still, but that's another bone to chew on.
Or there's too many, maybe. There's too many small ones.
Yeah, too many small ones that are software oriented as opposed to true organizations like Simpo or what have you. All right, so it is very important for contributors or editors to be able to cite good experts that are not in it for themselves, and you got to be able to sift through that and understand how much they're contributing. And you do have to have a wake of good, legitimate content. You just can't be on the speaker circuit and jumping all over the place. And that gets me to my last point, George, is really understanding about conferences. Now your organization, Third Door Media, hosts regular conferences, I can never let it say it, SMX West, East, and Advanced. The conferences are awesome. We've been to one of them a couple of years back in San Jose. Hopefully we're actually going to be at this new one coming up here soon. Who goes?
I'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who goes to these conferences?
I would say that I haven't really run into any people totally new to the industry. So I'd say people with at least like 1 or 2 years experience generally come. But that having been said, you can totally come relatively new to East or West. And no matter what level you are, you're going to learn something. Everybody's super friendly. Advanced, of course, we try to make it more advanced, so there's more into the technical SEO side of things. At East this year, we did an entire track for local enterprises, and so we're always trying to do different things for every single conference to kind of differentiate them. So you can check out. Are you going to link to the SMX West landing page?
Absolutely.
I hope so. So people can figure out, what part of my job fits into this conference? How can I justify my employer to send me to this? And then that'll make you better at serving your clients, but also make you, just a stronger SEO, a stronger SEM, what have you.
Right. So you're not so much I-oriented, but you're T-oriented when it comes down to your skill sets, is that it may not very well be right in your lane. But, I mean, and we also challenge, if you're coming in who has a particular service, take on some of the other speakers that you're not oriented towards, because you learn a lot just by kind of jumping your lane, so to speak, right?
And there's this whole like silo of, you're SEO and you do PPC work. So you kind of go off in your different conference rooms and directions, but we're also noticing that a lot of people have to do both, and that using the data from both, I believe Will Reynolds has been very vocal about this, using the data from both to help your targeting can be mind-blowing. It can save you so much time and your budget from your clients' end. So definitely check out Will Reynolds if you haven't heard of him. He spoke at East. I'm not sure if he's doing West yet, but yeah. You just finding these techniques makes you more efficient at what you're able to do. You'll both expand your skill set, but you also just get faster and better at doing things.
Plus, you get to geek out and actually and truly geek out, where maybe you don't get to do that often at your company level, but you're rubbing elbows with the true geeks. And
it's okay to love what you're doing, and that's hard when you're like, if you have a husband or wife, what have you, children, they don't really want to care about how much long tail keyword is converting for on your campaign. But you can sit at the breakfast table at SMX and just say it, and people are like, yeah, I feel you, and this is what happened to me.
Yeah.
And that feeling once, twice, 3 times a year, as many times as you can get to a conference and be with the community, is worthwhile every time.
Absolutely. Kunzu actually tweeted today. He said, another season of holiday where you're trying to explain to your family what you do, and he pretty much just tells them that he's a writer.
Yeah,
And that's the thing, is that you really can't explain to a great degree, or again, eyes roll back in the head. My kids will never listen to this show. They've actually told me en masse is that they are tired of hearing me talk about this, and they're not going to tune in and actually listen to more. I mean, I'm having a small revolt in my family because of this. Anyway.
just tell them that they should always love what they do.
Right.
And that makes you excited to talk about it, then talk about it. Find the right people to talk about it. But it shows that you love what you do if you're talking about it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully not you're overly frustrated or anything like that.
Yeah. No, don't go postal on the stage. So as a quick tip for maybe the novices that are in the industry, they've been around for years, and they want to actually step up on stage and talk about some of the things that they're passionate about, what would you give as kind of some tips or recommendations for those soon-to-be speakers of that next group coming in?
Take everything in small steps. I know that's like what everybody says, but you're going to want to write something before you can just pitch a conference stage. But once you have that experience and you know what techniques or what insights you're using that other people in the industry aren't using, then you can actually create a deck or come at it with an angle where you can contribute to the industry. You don't want to get up on stage and have everyone just kind of look at you like, yeah, but I already knew that. That I'm sure would be the worst feeling in the world. So go to a few conferences first, see what the level of these discussions is at. If anyone's talking about what you want to talk about, then discuss with other people, hey, what do you know about this? And then you can just kind of accumulate that knowledge and then find a way to present it in the most succinct, concise way possible. If you want to keep getting on stage, you have to have that kind of stage presence. You just can't have a deck with your analytics and a step-by-step process and expect to be on a stage again.
Right.
People have to leave reviews of speakers. They have to like you. The people that put on the conferences are going to be in the room. They have to see that you did a good job and that people got what they paid for. Because if you're boring, they're not even going to remember to look up your slide after, your decks after. So you have to put all of those things together. It's not like you're going to start your career and then 2 years later, well, you might 2 years later get up on stage. Some people have, but be patient with it and bring something that's you're really, really proud of. Even though later everyone's like super embarrassed about whatever their first thing they did was, you still have to be able to say, well, it was really good for my first time.
Yeah, no, agreed. But I mean, all things being equal, I mean, our industry is full of introverts that regularly don't want to have that particular horrific experience on stage, and it's not that horrific. I mean, go with your passion and figure it out in small steps. And honestly, before a national conference, do it locally. Try to lead locally first and jump in there and grab a hold of a key topic and try to plug in with other speakers, other groups, because it's kind of like the minors as opposed to going to the majors, right?
Absolutely. That's great advice.
Cool. Well, give us a behind the scenes story. Anything you want to share? Maybe some funny or horror stories from a conference.
The horror stories have actually been pretty bad, but they're not in terms of like, they're not like funny bad. They're just like, oh, something tragic happened and a speaker couldn't show up. And that's the thing about this community. We've had people who are there to attend, or they only were there to do one particular session.
Right.
And we asked them, hey, can you extend your session to this or do it at this time instead? And people have stepped up. I have been amazed at the things that we've had fall through, and then people are just willing to, hey, I'll do this, or I can try to share what I know about this, and that's just wowed me, and that's been a huge part of the conference experience for me.
Very cool. Very cool. So how has your understanding of the industry improved from being involved with these conferences? I mean, you're right in the smack dab middle of them, moderating these things, right?
Yeah, I would say that my understanding of the industry has definitely made me more cynical if that hasn't come off like in every other sentence. But that is the industry and not the people in it.
Right.
Every time I've come in contact with the people in the industry, the people that are doing their jobs for their clients, they say everybody's the hero of their own story, and that's true. But I've also, every time I talk to somebody, I'm like, wow, you are the hero. You're doing a great job. And that's just great to be in an industry where you generally respect the people that you're around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm supremely grateful for that. And I think that's something that we try to get across at every conference. I hope that every attendee feels that way.
Well, compare this to culture journalism. Did you see that many individuals really trying to take the bull by the horn and not do something that was so self-aggrandizing, but actually from a level of education trying to just give back to the community?
I would say that I was fortunate in the things that I was able to cover in journalism. So it was culture journalism. Most of the time, people were doing things that they felt really did make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
One time, though, when I was doing a culture journalism thing, I actually went to go get an examination at a plastic surgery clinic in Korea because their medical tourism industry is enormous.
Yeah.
And the company staged the interview. They said they would provide me with somebody who was a customer, and they staged that whole thing. The woman told me later that, oh yeah, I actually worked there full time. So everything was like a lie, except for the plastic surgery I had got done. That was real, but the context was a lie. And that was months later. The story had already went out. We were really upset about it, but
wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
Oh,
podcasting though. I did want to say something about podcasting.
Yeah, hit it.
We are inching slowly towards this place of being able to really track our podcast ad campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have a podcast, just as a publisher, what you can measure is so limited. You have maybe your average listening duration.
That's it,
right?
Yeah.
And when you're an advertiser, things are even worse. Like Spotify gives average listening duration to publishers. Tracking the ROI has just been a nightmare. And I would like to see that change, as I'm sure you would as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been chewing on glass for the last 9 years because there's just nothing there. The industry hasn't matured at all, except for ad intercept platforms where you can throw breaks in and be able to have those uncontrollable ads in your broadcast.
Yeah, and there's all these numbers that say, oh, in 2021 or whatever, we're going to see over this much money in podcast ads. I'm sorry, I wrote an article about how much the projection was. I can't remember now, but it was some astronomical number compared to what it was a few years ago, which I believe will be the case. People are going to pump more money into this, but I caution brands, how are you going to be able to justify it? I mean, if you're just doing brand lift campaigns, then go have at it. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard about the Quip electric toothbrush. Oh man. But if you are really if conversions matter in a larger extent, you really have to think this through. Are you going to be able to throw enough money at this to make it work? And if not, then what are you doing this for? Where is your audience? How are you going to be able to track things if you're really data driven? If you're not, then have at it.
It's very similar to influencer marketing from a brand standpoint. There's so much in parallel, but you'd expect the technology to really be able to help and assist in this. And it just seems that it's been just untapped, and we should be able to move mountains in metrics. It's just not there yet.
No, it's not. And I would say even in influencer marketing, generally every influencer has their own landing page or URL.
Yep.
With a podcast, you're generally requiring people to remember your URL after they hear it.
That's right.
And they might not convert until months later. They're not going to remember that specific URL. You might have how did you hear about us? But are they really going to remember? So when you don't have that luxury of clicking on the link, things get a lot more murky, a lot murkier. Yeah. Well,
here's to that. We certainly are looking forward to the improvements in that space. And in marginal matters, if you're going to be advertising in the podcast realm, you need to be prepared for customization of landing pages and URLs and everything to be able to capture as much evidence of return on at least objective regularly, but you're going to get me in a rant here, and I don't have enough time for that. So thanks for that that last topic. Now I got to do a whole other show, George. Come on.
Oh, please have me back for like a soundbite because I have feelings about podcasts because it's a medium I love so much.
Yeah. No.
And the technology is going in all places. Like Google's trying to index them by transcribing them and things like that. But where are we really headed? Like, are we going to get there to a place where this is a as viable as advertising on a more traditional format like TV? Because you can't really measure that there too, but it's seen as like, oh, well, TV is relatively safe to advertise on, right? It's not wasted money, right?
Yeah.
How do you track?
Arbitron. All right. Hey, I'm out of time, but we'd love to have you back to talk about some of these key concepts because you know what? We don't talk enough about podcasts around here. We honestly don't. But I do need to wrap up our interview here. We do have a couple questions that we ask our guests every time we close out. First and foremost, what bugs you about your industry? Now, that's a loaded question that could probably actually unpack an entire other show, seeing that we've gone down the yellow brick road of cynicism here.
I would say that that there is a lot of knee-jerk reactions because we're all people that work on the internet one way or another, right? Maybe we work in a physical office or we work remote, but when you see some news and you just want to tweet about it or you respond to Danny Sullivan's tweet, you have to really weigh out how useful is your comment going to be. Does it expand the conversation? Does it really generate an interesting nuance for people to think about?
Right.
Or are you just, bemoaning something that happened? That's something that I feel like when people, even people that I speak to that are journalists that don't cover SEO, they're like, oh, wow, SEOs really get angry. And, that leaves an impression. That's not the impression that you want to have for people who work with SEOs. Everybody works in a marketing firm and there's other people. You don't want to be known as the angry SEO person.
Well, I mean, legitimately so. A lot of those creatives just don't get it, there's
a lot of important things to care about and there's reasons to be upset, but
right.
You really have to weigh out whether it's worth being vocal about or how can you phrase it in a way where it's useful and not just ranting.
And just not noise. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, conversely, what excites you about the industry? Because obviously you're right there in pocket and you see so many things that are happening. What are your thoughts there?
The industry right now is headed into an interesting space with all the products that are kind of rolling out and the way that natural language processing has had a spotlight on it because of BERT. I love language. I've learned 2 foreign languages, and just to see that come full circle. So people remember that search is about language.
Yep.
It is also about, your site speed and your user experience, but primarily it's about your user, and that's what communication is about. So remind them that you do work at a computer, but you work to connect people and brands, right? And why do people want to connect with brands? To generally connect with more people, right? I really like to play Magic the Gathering, and that's a card game, but you can't just sit there and play it by yourself. So I might go look for information about it online, but ultimately it is to connect with other people. And that's something that we have to really keep at the forefront. It is about the user.
Very good. Very good. Well, that said, is there anything that we can promote for our users regarding Third Door? There's a few conferences coming up. You want to roll through those dates?
Okay, so let me get my calendar out. SMX West, I'm really excited about. It is February 18th and 19th. And the reason I'm so excited about it is because it's in my hometown of San Jose, California. Right now I'm in Boston. It's cold. It was snowing earlier. I can't wait to be back, even though I do love it here.
San Jose is a great city, and they got some great food.
Yes. Sorry, I'm really passionate about that, but that's the one that comes up. We have SMX Advanced in Seattle in I think it's like June 10th or so. It's mid June, and that's another fantastic one as well. For people on the MarTech side, we also do MarTech West, and that's in San Jose in April. So if you're more on the MarTech side instead of search, then that'll be more up your alley. But for everybody in SEO or SEM, definitely SMX West in San Jose and SMX Advanced in Seattle. I'll be there for both. If you see me and you're an introvert, you're there alone, or you're not an introvert, just come and say hi. I'm always happy to meet people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then you also have East. That's coming up, in latter part of the year, right?
That was in November of 2019. So we haven't set a date yet for the 20. As far as I know, we haven't set a date yet.
Gotcha. And then there's also SMX Munich that comes up.
Our international shows, Munich, London.
Got a rocket. Oh,
we're coming to you.
Fantastic. All right, so certainly want to put the links up on the Edge notes. We do recommend you guys go out to these conferences. We've been out there a few years back. I got to be able to witness the Google Dance, and we had an opportunity to get into the Intersectorum whenever Google first opened the doors to hear from the SEOs. And boy, we were a fly on the wall in that space, and it was. I almost reached back and touched Matt Cutts, although Tom pulled my arm back at the time. No, but it is a really, really cool thing to go out and experience. So highly recommend that. And we want to make sure our listeners check out the trending news that we covered with George in the bonus podcast that we did, and check that out on the YouTube upload as well. Probably be out tomorrow. Any final thoughts for our audience, our listening audience here, George?
Thanks for bearing with me if you made it this far. I really do hope to see you at a conference. I always welcome feedback on my articles. You can go ahead and DM me. Please don't put me on blast in front of everybody. Nobody appreciates that. But it's an honor to serve the community. And it's just so amazing to be on this podcast. And I know the caliber of people that you have on this. So I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And keep up the good work. We want to make sure that our listeners follow you on Twitter at Geo, CHIN. Give me pronounce that for me again.
It's the first three letters of my first, middle, and last name, Geo Chingu. So it's GEOCHINGU.
All right. I was going to botch that up anyway, so thank you for nothing on Facebook, but we will certainly want to make sure that they track you down, George-C- again, Nguyen, Win, but make sure you track him down. He's got some good portfolio out there, a profile out there, and track him down because he's really good, giving some good information to our industry on a regular basis. Thanks so much for being with us today on the show, and I appreciate you going along with us because there was a lot to unpack. I was excited about talking about a number of these things, so thanks again, George. Certainly appreciate you coming on, and we'd love to have you back talking about podcasts in the near future.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Aaron.
All right. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Edge of the Web on YouTube. And if you're really feeling up to it today, go over and leave us a quick review on iTunes. We certainly would appreciate that because it gives us a bit of lift and lets everybody else know what we're doing here on the show. Make sure to check out all the must-see videos and much more over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We'll talk to you next week. We're going to be talking to Timothy Jensen of Clicks Marketing, talking about PPC. So do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.